Hey, Susan. How are you?
Hello, Toddy. How are you?
I am doing good. Are you in the office?
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty quiet today.
Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. Okay. I'll be quiet, listening in what's happening in the community.
Do you have any agenda today, Toddy?
No, nothing on the community side. I have more agendas on Microsoft side.
Hello.
At least.
Yep, just giving a couple of minutes for everybody to join. Cool. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, looks good.
Thanks, Noel. We'll start the PRs. We have a pretty short list at the moment. Contribution letter is still in draft mode. I have a refactoring PR that I'm working with Binbin. So I just pushed an update today. So I think Binbin, I'll ping him to take another look. Akash have added a PR for dev build guidance. Akash, are you waiting for a sign off from Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for a few more maintainers to sign off before we can merge this in. Bin left a few comments and then I made the corresponding changes and he says it looks good now, but if others could take a look, that'd be great.
I'll take a look today, Akash.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And I see there's 2 new PRs that's opened this week. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet, but we'll get them reviewed this week. And Akash, is there any details that you want to talk about for the Docker parsing?
Not too much. So this one is a fix. I encountered an issue when doing some more Ratify testing. If you pass in the default Docker style references, so if you just pass in like a hello world image name, for example, the default behavior in Docker is to append the docker.io domain and the default Docker library repository as well. So some of that logic was missing. So I looked into it further and I'm switching to use the upstreams normalization method for it. So it's not a big change, just updating that and then adding a unit test for that.
Cool, thank you. Yep, anything related to PRs? Anything else before we move on to our C3 discussion?
I think the thing to just call out here is just a reminder, folks, that we are hosting a pull request review series on Mondays. And so if anybody is interested to bringing up their code to kind of have additional eyes or like to facilitate like walking through the code and we're all like recommended. The ways, I mean, you can bring it up today if you want a PR thing, like there's only a few of them there. If you are working on something throughout the week, and you want to bring it up on Monday, just send a message in the Slack channel, and we can also schedule it that way. Yep, that's it.
Thank you, Luis. Yeah, our current next item is RC3. So let me bring out the RC3 board just to see what we have as candidates for the release. Yep, so this is the RC3 release items so far. So I want to check with Noel and Jimmy. Are there other items that you would like to be included in the RC3 release?
So yeah, as a matter of fact, there is. I haven't submitted the PR yet, but I've modified the ECR basic auth to be more like the basic auth used for Azure. And I wanted to review the code real quick before I submit the PR. So
yeah, would you like, I think we'll have time in the community call today, or we also have the Monday PR code review series. What would you prefer?
either way, I mean, like I said, I haven't created a PR yet. So for the PR series, which I don't have that on my calendar, but for the PR series, is that a PR that has to already be submitted, or is a PR that you're considering with just an issue submitted?
I think it can be both, but it was initially we thought like if there are bigger changes that the PR author would like to walk through, that's what we would use that time for. And also, if you have a formal PR, it also gives the reviewer some time to to think about it ahead of time.
Okay.
Right.
So
yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Luis.
guess just to add to Susan, I'd like to kind of. It'll be a good opportunity also. I mean, I think also a good thing to bring up in these ones, and maybe is if you already have like a design doc, like for instance, like I can think of something like what Noel had for plugin support, like that's a bigger change or a bigger feature, and you want to kind of discuss kind of the direction you're planning on designing, and if you have like a PR, these are good. This is a good way to sort of walk through in a slower way through kind of what a new feature, what a new, even something like a breaking, like for instance, the first one we talked through beans versioning changes, and it was a good discussion as well. So he had a PR to kind of walk us through. So having definitely a PR or design doc definitely helps.
Well, I don't have a design doc. I have the issue there that basically listed as a bug, and I fixed the code, and I'm working on the testing right now. It's issue 678.
Mm-hmm. For this specific one, maybe like if you have a proposed PR, that'll help.
All right. Well, I'll. So, do we have a meeting notice for this? Is that because I may have missed that?
Yeah, let me bring it up. So I believe Luis added a section for pull request reviews. So it's just after the community meeting section. But if you refresh the Ratify community meeting calendar, I think the PR Zoom invite is also on the same Ratify calendar. It's currently set to Monday, 5 to 6 PST. Does that time work for you, Jimmy?
No, that's like 8 o'clock my time. So, and then I would be at 7 o'clock the next day for a meeting. So,
yeah, so maybe similar to the community meeting, we can also look into have 2 sessions. What do you think, Luis?
Yeah, I mean that I'm open to that as well. Also, this we can also use these community calls that are earlier to kind of go through that. But if for this specific one, Jimmy, since the next community call, I think it's at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I don't know if that's going to be too late for you or if
No,
that's okay.
I mean, I could, I'll tell you what, I'll make the Monday call. But I can't do that on a regular basis. I mean, that's just, it's just cutting into my family time there.
Private, yeah.
So
That's understandable. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we're trying to be as time zone friendly as possible, kind of having several times. Yeah, in your case, like feel free to use another community call, or we can probably, like, if needed, schedule something off. But let us know.
okay, all right, I'll make it work. At a minimum, I'll show up on Monday with a PR in hand.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay, back to the RC3 list. Any feedback, Toddy? No?
I just want to kind of ask a question about issue number, I think it's related to 694, the number 63 there, but we have us in 695. So kind of what the thought was from the Ratify side on how cert chains and key vault should work. You know, I've looked at this with the inline cert provider a while back, and I'm not actually sure if it's possible. So I didn't know what Ratify wants to do with cert chains, or if like the guidance would be if you're using cert chains, which is kind of the recommended default, you know, at least on the notation side, like, do we just tell people not to use key vault? You know, if I go to a customer, do I tell them you should be using inline cert store? Or kind of what's the path forward on that? At a technical level, I'm not sure how to get a cert chain without being able to call get secret from key vault. I actually don't think it's possible. So at that point, it's kind of like, well, we have this key vault feature, but it's confusing for me to tell a customer, store your certs in key vault for signing, and then you can't point to them for verification because of, you know, voodoo issues that I don't want to get into with them. So I haven't been in a couple of calls. I wanted to check in and see where we were at on that.
Yep, totally understand. And just a clarification, Noel, for your customer scenario, is there private key in Key Vault? Is there entire cert chain in Key Vault?
I think we need to support both. I think there'll be a mix of some people have their root and leaf certs all in Key Vault, and I think there will be another set of customers where they want to keep their root outside. So I think as long as we have documentation for both, I think either one is good.
Yep.
I see Sajay's got a hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Sajay.
Hey, I want to break this issue up into two parts. One is, first question would be, does Ratify as the open source project implementation have a problem? And is it only specific? The second one would be, if the problem is specific only to Azure and Azure Key Vault, then I think there's a follow-up for folks who are on Azure to have the story sorted out with the Key Vault provider and whatnot. So do we know where we are at? Like, is this something that AWS also has a problem with? Because I want to probably, like, if it's Azure only, then it's a different conversation. But if it's a Ratify project fundamental issue, then that's something we should discuss here.
Yeah, I chime in from my seat. It's because we do have the inline cert provider now, it's not a blocker for any customers that I would go talk to. It's kind of a matter of confusing guidance, because customers are going to see the Key Vault thing, want to use it, and then I'm going to go tell them, you know, actually, if you're using root certs with notation, that you can't, or at least you can't right now, because Key Vault doesn't support the APIs that we need on the back end. So it's an Azure specific issue. As far as I know, I would defer to Jimmy or anybody else on whether AWS or other clouds
so
exhibit a similar issue.
Yeah, so with regard to use with root certs, so we plan on using root certs with the signer plugin integrated to Notary V2. So that, and right now I have not built any integration into our secrets manager, which would be similar to your Key Vault. So I have no integration built right now for Secrets Manager, and the root search that we plan on using would be through Signer integration to Notary. So I don't see that this particularly applies to us, unless I'm missing something.
Okay, so maybe as next steps, I'll take up an action item to work with Toddy and make sure that we have a better story. Noel, I'll probably include you on the conversation with Key Vault because this is something I understand the challenge here, because right now you have to do some bash voodoo to kind of like build the bundle, right?
Yeah.
But maybe that's where we are at for now, and raise this up internally. I think that's the only action item I can think of, unless there's something better we can do.
That certainly works for me. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't misunderstanding something, and that something was supported, and maybe I just didn't know how to do it. But if that's the path forward, that works. Happy to help any way I
Yeah.
can.
No, thank you. Because last week I think the discussion brought up whether we should consider having get secrets path, and I'm like, no, Ratify is not supposed. We need separation of concerns here. Ratify
Agreed.
should not have the same overlapping permissions as a signer. The only
Right.
thing that we need to do is have a set of certs that we can validate, and if the provider that we're working with does not have the capabilities, we keeping the security hat on first is probably P0, and then we'll figure out the pain in some other way. So I'll follow up with you and Toddy and Luis and folks.
Sounds good.
Toddy has his hand up.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to confirm that. So this is Azure specific issue. We already had some conversations with Key Vault about not being able to support these scenarios. But as Sajay mentioned, let's just handle it with the Azure Key Vault folks. It doesn't concern the community as a whole. It's not a problem in Ratify, it's a problem on the AKV side. So I can actually I can share some discussions that we had. So our colleagues Feynman and Yi, they already are working with Azure Key Vault on that.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
And now back to the ratified documentation. So we'll call out that we only support self-signed cert in the Azure Key Vault scenario, and we do not support a certificate chain. And if the customer wants to use the root key for verification, please use the inline certificate provider. Does that sound like a good summary?
Yeah, I think that would be a great way to start. And then if we can work on the back end to improve that experience for Ratify users, great. And if not, at least we've got very clear documentation on like two paths that work. So that sounds awesome. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, and Akash yesterday also, like me and Akash were talking about this earlier today, actually, and we were looking at the cosign project where they allow you, so on top of the, like similar to inline provider, you can specify the entire cert chain inline. No, is there a customer that would find this useful? Would the customer want to specify the entire chain value?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because that's kind of what the inline cert provider is and does. So I would, if somebody was going to do that, I'd have to go find a customer that wanted half of their thing in Key Vault and another half to specify inline with the chain to see if that made sense for them. So I don't have somebody banging down my door. I just kind of like am trying to think ahead of what people are likely to do, and
yeah,
so that's where I'm coming from. Not urgent at all on any of this.
Thanks. Okay. Back to the RC list.
Susan?
Yep, go ahead, Luis.
So I posted a link. I think this, I don't know why not all of the RC3 stuff in the milestone is showing. So the milestone view has many more items. So can go through that list instead.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so there's now we see 15 items.
Mm-hmm. So the first one, you are working on a PR, right?
Yep.
Bin has a threat model.
To clarify, this threat model is like a threat model for the community to review. Is there a community review process?
I think this is, we might take this one out of here. I need to follow up with Shiwei what's the community guideline for a community threat model. This one was intended more for first party, but
Got it. Okay.
we might need to remove this one. One thing that I don't see here, and it's related to the third one, is we wanted to start looking at versioning the docs.
Okay. Yeah, we can create an item for that. I don't think we have one created.
Right. And you can assign that one to myself.
Okay, I'll take a note on that. And I know Akash is working on adding, looking into adding metrics for Ratify.
Right. Akash, have we discussed which metrics we want to add?
No, so actually that's the first step. I'm just writing a proposal document that I'll present next week, and we can discuss like which metrics we want to target first, and then on top of that, for metric support, we also need to implement certain metrics exporters in Ratify, so to Prometheus or to various other metrics consumers like Open Census and things like that. So we can discuss like which providers we want to prioritize, as well as the metrics that we want to add in the V1.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, it might be a good, I mean, if that might be a good topic for the next community meeting to discuss, if you have a proposal by then.
Sounds good.
For the cosine verifier, Joshua mentioned that Joshua is not on the call, right?
Yeah, not today.
I see. This might be a good one to assign to him.
Cosine.
Sorry, from this list, is there anything that it's missing?
Sorry, about the list of deliverables, or you mean the list for
Deliverables. Like, is there anything that you were expecting for us to work this release that's not here?
And that is for RC3, right?
Right. Also, I don't see Jimmy's issue here either. We should probably
Is it 6, 7, 8?
6, 7. Oh yeah, you're right. That's it. Yep.
Yeah, for RC3, I don't think there are more things. What is so? Maybe my question is, what is our plan for RC after RC3? Because one of the big kind of issues that I see are around multi-tenant scenarios. I personally talk with a lot of customers that actually are interested in a multi-tenant way to use Ratify. I can give you an example, like for example, cloud service that deploys, actually sits on top of Kubernetes, that deploys customer containers and deploys sidecars next to the customer container. And they want to actually separate the way actually they manage the admission based on whatever the service wants to have as security, as well as what the customer wants to have as security. That's one thing that I think right now we are not supporting very well. So that's one kind of big ask from my side, but it's not for RC3, right? That's
Right.
I think
No,
that post.
so I
yeah.
think a good way to sort of do this is let's start sort of calling out the scenarios, right? Like the scenario A, this is whichever company has a cluster that wants to do these verifications. And then from there, we can start kind of breaking down into different features or user stories that we can start looking at starting next, not for R3, but maybe starting on RC4. I'm pretty sure that
a question.
Yep.
Yeah, a question for the kind of everybody on the call is like, from release point of view, is that something that we think we can add in the first release of Ratify, or is it something that we are thinking for?
I think this is, well, I think this would take several releases. Like or at least start kind of identifying what are the big pieces of work we'll need to address and tackle.
Okay.
Like I don't think multi-tenancy will be a release candidate for deliverable. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's several things we need to take into account and design. So it's more of like, let's put the scenario, let's understand what are the scenarios we want to tackle. Let's start kind of coming up with what are the things we need to implement, to design, and then come up with sort of like a little bit of a roadmap here.
Okay, so I can work with Yi. Yi has been looking at the overall experience with Ratify and how that will work. So we had discussed a bunch of things there. For example, one is the multi-tenancy. The other one is the multiple verifiers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I may be running actually images, which may be strange as a scenario, if you ask me, because I will expect to actually verify with only one thing, but customers can do actually this scenario that I said about the multi-tenancy is like the service may want to actually verify with notary, while the customer may want to verify with cosign. So how do we coexist on the same infrastructure with different verifiers? This is the other thing. One additional thing that we've discussed was also how we can leverage the various plugins that are implemented in notation to be also easily transferable here, because we don't want to spend all the time to re-implement everything that we are implementing in notation in Ratify. So we are looking to have new plugins coming in notation. The question will be, what will be the easiest way to say, okay, now we have a HashiCorp plugin. How easy it will be for me to go and use it on with Ratify, or do we need to spend like a whole release cycle to integrate the plugin? So those are kind of the three big things as areas where I've been looking at, and I know that E has done some work in that space.
Okay, let's I think Sajay had a good point here in the chat. Making sure that there's an issue for the different scenarios, and then we can drive the conversation there.
I will make sure that we file those. I see that there is a multi-tenancy already, so we can eventually reuse that one. So we keep continuation. He will be driving kind of majority of those, but I will talk with him to make sure that he files the issues and we are clear on the scenarios.
Yep, sounds good.
Toddy, do you think multi-tenancy is pre-GA, or are we okay to GA the first version without this and then?
I would like to get some feedback from Jimmy, maybe how they are looking at this on AWS side. If you have opinion, not put me on the spot, Jimmy.
Yeah, you did actually. So
No, you can
personally, I think multi-tenancy, I think, is a post-GA type thing. I would be interested though to understand, because to me multi-tenancy folds into it. The previous discussion we talked about with multiple verifiers, Notary and the different plugins, as well as cosign, and being able for tenants within a cluster running a single version of Gatekeeper and Ratify, or if that's even the case, could this be a large cluster running multiple, Gatekeeper Ratify solutions? I mean, what is the thing there? But I think being able to support multiple verifiers and selectable by tenant is a key to multi-tenancy. So then I would say, when will that be ready? Because to me, that seems like a lot to take on. I don't know when GA was initially proposed, so maybe I'm speaking out of turn.
Yeah, that also is a question, and I have kind of similar thoughts about that, whether it's because it will be good to have something available for customers so they can test and provide feedback, and we can actually have the next version which has extended capabilities. But kind of maybe to chime into what Jimmy said, I see kind of the multi-tenancy and the multi-verifiers working in again in parallel, but the different scenarios that I see is like you can have the same infrastructure that needs both, as well as separate infrastructure. So I do think that we need to look for ways how we can have more than one Ratify instance per cluster. And
something else that I was thinking about over the weekend, how are we, and maybe I'm sorry if I missed this, but are we giving the ability without, let's just say if I bring up Ratify and Gatekeeper, it's not all or nothing, right? So like if I don't want to verify a specific set of registries, can I bypass those? Is that intrinsic, or is it already, or is it something that we're thinking about building? Because as we start to, I was looking at, helping folks with the whole, registry freeze and everything from GCR. And so when I started to look at that, I started to think about, are there scenarios where folks are going to be consuming non-verifiable images? I know it's not a great thing to think about, but I think it's going to coexist within clusters, the solutions like cosign and then Ratify Gatekeeper exist as well. So
that is great point, actually. That's absolutely true.
I guess I wanted to throw it out there, and it kind of like raised earlier, because now we're talking about multi-tenancy with all the differences that each tenant may want. They may also want to be able to specifically bypass a set of registries that they're not interested in verifying, or are not ready to verify, not supported yet. I don't know.
One more question, and maybe scenario. I don't know how valid it will be, but do we think that there is a possibility that somebody runs Gatekeeper and Kyverno on the same cluster?
So it is possible. I mean, if you think about Kubernetes in general right now, running Gatekeeper or Kyverno by itself you're still running you're running in the same cluster with PSA, and soon you'll be running in the same cluster with the cell-based validation that's currently in alpha, I think, inside Kubernetes. So you're going to have, at least without Gatekeeper and Kyverno or whatever, KubeWarden or JS policy or whatever solution is out there, you're still going to be running, even if it's just one Gatekeeper or one Kyverno, you're still going to be running with two other built-in, in-tree policy engines. So yeah, I mean, they can possibly step on each other and cause, a validation or mutation storm, so to speak. So, and that's kind of one of the reasons why, or at least that's what, Akash and I were talking about, that's one of the reasons that Gatekeeper wants to keep things down to like, below 7 seconds or so.
Yep. Okay, so I will take a stop on some of those issues, Jimmy and Susan. But yeah, like I am not sure whether we will cover everything. So any additional feedback that folks have, that will be great. Just to clarify completely the scenarios, because I asked the question about Kyverno because I have not heard that one. I've heard the kind of the other ones multiple times, but like
I think my take here is let's start simple with like, hey, the basic scenarios, and then as we hear more from customers, there's feedback on the project, we make it more complex, right? Like having Kyverno and Gatekeeper both might be something that we maybe anticipating, but maybe it's not something that customers would really run into.
So I think we also need to pay attention to the multi-tenancy working group, right? There is such a thing. We need to understand the outputs of that group and where and what they're thinking, so that we can understand the use cases that we're going to have to satisfy. I mean, multi-tenancy is usually broken down into like soft multi-tenancy and hard multi-tenancy, where you're and it also may include items like vCluster, you know. So I think it's a lot to tackle unless we get at least some guidance from the working group.
Right. What is that working group, Jimmy?
that's
The
Kubernetes
multi-tenancy. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And to kind of like to talk about Kyverno real quick, if you look at the release schedule of Gatekeeper and Kyverno, they're only off by like 2 months, is when they started back in like 2019 timeframe. And you know, they have a similar number of stars, similar number of forks. They're really comparable with respect to adoption across the Kubernetes community. So, I mean, I think they are working on a solution. They already, like Gatekeeper, support cosign, and I think they're currently working on a solution that may support Notary v2.
Jimmy, did you say Kyverno will support Notary v2?
I think they may be working on that. I don't think that it includes Ratify, right? So
no, it does not include Ratify, but Kyverno has already actually POC with Notary and integration there. So they've been working on that for a while.
yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like we have a lot of work to do.
Do you need a PM
Back.
for that?
Unless you want it just to work from our machine study, it'll work fine from our machines.
Oh, okay. Do you write all the stuff in Go? It's not my preferred language, honestly, but I can do it.
Yeah, Sajay has a comment, GPT-4.
Actually, if I am to write in Go, GPT will be my copilot a lot.
Maybe we should ask GPT, can you design a multi-tenant policy validator engine?
Okay. Any other feedback for other items, Luis?
No, that's not for me.
Decouple nested reference from verifiers. Akash, do you remember it? Is this one already complete? Oh.
I think Bin had been looking into it. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you wanted to. Yeah, what the plan is for this.
Okay.
There's actually some of the multi-tenant items in this list. Like there's one here that says ratify as a replica set.
Yeah, I just added some off the cuff pre-GA tasks that I thought might be useful, like the replica set instead of just having a single Ratify pod, but that could get punted to post GA if we see that as a multi-tenancy concern. So same with the other one that I added was the one above it, which is the OCI store blob eviction. I think that's definitely a pre-GA thing, because this will cause out of memory problems for a pod in its current state if we have a long running Ratify instance. So
yeah, the other infrastructure item Akash and I talked about earlier was like, do we need to have a persisted cache at some point? Akash, what is our cache limit at the moment?
yeah, I mean, it's in memory, so for whatever reason the pod restarts, then you lose all of that. And I think it's more of a concern if you have a replica set, because with multiple replicas, we definitely need to have some sort of synchronization among them. But I think it's maybe a later concern. We personally haven't run into any or heard of any issues with it yet, so not sure. Toss up.
Yeah, Sajay, you have hand up.
Yeah. So we know we implemented the whole OCI layout for ORAS, right? And you can have a file-based cache in ORAS, and if that file-based cache is backed up with a PVC on the Ratify pod, technically should. I think that the question is, we could try all these experiments. Should we kind of focus on that pre-GA, or should it be something that we can add as a patch release going forward also?
So I think when I hear the idea of using PVCs, the first thing I think of is how do we make them work across multiple AZs? Like on the AWS side, multiple AZs, PVCs basically are connected to elastic block storage, so they're not going to easily transfer across multiple AZs. So if a pod comes up in a different AZ, you've got an issue there. There are certain softwares out there available, like Portworx, that allow you to abstract that layer such that you're not directly coupled to a AZ specific EBS volume. But that would be one of the things I'd be concerned about working out, is if we are going to use some sort of stateful set or some sort of PVC backed persistent caching, how do we make that such that it is available and reconnected to pods that may shift between AZs?
Okay, that's good feedback. It kind of means that we have to discuss more before we even take this item, right? Like depends on what the underlying implementation we choose, the cost would directly kind of
we can't
explode in some way.
Okay. And we can't necessarily, while I mentioned a software layer like Portworx, it's not something that we can say we have to use in order to use this persistent cache.
Right.
I mean, there has to be some other solution.
Okay, fair enough. I think these things can come as patch releases, right? Like as we do a 1.0, we can do a 1.1 following up with one feature, do a 1.2 bringing in the next one with multi-tenancy as needed, as long as we're not breaking stuff. And I would not be shy of releasing 2.0 within some time, because Cosine has already gone to 2.0, right? Like they went through this whole process very quickly. So given where we are, maybe that's okay.
Okay. Just checking if anyone added anything to the agenda. Yeah, anything else, anyone?
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks for joining.
All right, good
See
night.
you all next week.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.